This is the EnergyMakers show, featuring the innovators, financiers, and policymakers focused on the global energy demand. Brought to you by NRG, moving clean energy forward.
Hi, I'm Russ Capper, and welcome to another episode of the EnergyMakers show. We've got a special lineup today because we're going to present selections from three of our favorite interviews from our library. First up, from episode 53, Paul Dickerson's interview with Sarah Groen, co-founder of the Surge Accelerator. Then from episode 49, my interview with Bill White, former three-term mayor for the city of Houston and Deputy Secretary of the Department of Energy in the Clinton administration. And then from episode 39, Paul Dickerson sitting down with Adam Rein, co-founder of Altaeros Energies, the company aimed at commercializing balloon-mounted wind turbines. All of that after this.
Where will the energy come from to move us forward? From natural sources in abundant supply, or perhaps a man-made source? At NRG, we believe innovation will solve our energy needs. That's why NRG is moving away from fossil fuels towards wind, solar, and other sustainable technologies to power the smart grid, the electric car, and our clean energy future. We're using all of our energy to develop more of it.
This is the EnergyMakers show, brought to you by NRG, moving clean energy forward. And now, back to the EnergyMakers show.
Welcome back to the EnergyMakers show. Our first special selection today comes from episode number 53, when Paul Dickerson interviewed Sarah Groen, the co-founder of Surge Accelerator. We entered the interview right after Paul had asked Sarah to tell us about Surge Accelerator.
Surge Accelerator is a mentor-driven seed accelerator focused on energy software companies. So what that really means is that we bring in startup companies and entrepreneurs who are experts in the energy industry and have great ideas to help make the energy industry better. We invest in those companies. We bring them to Houston for a 12-week boot camp where they're focused on developing their business plans, their financial models, getting in front of customers, capital, and fundraising.
Well, and we had your co-founder, Kurt Coburn, on the show, I guess it's about 12 months ago.
About a year ago, yeah.
So how have you spent the last 12 months?
So things have been great. They've been a little crazy. We ran our first class of companies. So we invested in and brought to Houston 11 companies. 6 were energy efficiency and smart grid companies. 4 were digital oil field focused, so software companies focused on traditional oil and gas customers. And 1 was an energy trading risk management company.
And how did you select those?
We select them on a variety of criteria that we match them to. One of the most important ones is team. So is the team scrappy? Are they good salespeople? Are they going to be able to not only work on their business and develop their product, but at the same time be out selling to customers? Do they have a great attitude? They're also going to be in a house working with 10, 12 other startups at the same time. So, does everybody get along with them? So that's one big criteria. Another one is how big is their idea? Is it a big market, and is it solving a real pain point? And if they're solving a real pain point, then their customers are going to be more likely to uptake the technology.
Well, and you mentioned in a house. I've been to your facility. You really do bring the companies in, and they're seated right next to one another.
Yeah, they don't live there as in stay the night, although I get that question a lot. But yeah, it's a really large house, Red Brick house in Montrose. There are 3 or 4 companies headquartered there all year round, and then there are 10 companies who come in for the 12-week program.
Pick 1 or 2 of the companies and tell us about it.
A lot of people always ask me, what stage of startup are you looking for? Mm-hmm. And we kind of run the gamut. So we had one company that came in that was an energy trading risk management platform called Molecule Software. When they came to us, they were basically just an idea. But the co-founders of the company were experts in the ETRM space.
ETRM?
Energy trading risk management. They teach energy trading risk management at University of Houston, and they had a ton of experience in the industry. We really liked the team, so we said, let's take a chance on this company. Today, they're about to launch their alpha product. They have 2 pilot customers. They've already raised some money, and they're looking forward towards revenue. And they were in March of last year just an idea. So that one's really exciting for us. On the other side of the spectrum, we've invested in companies that already have revenue, already have customers, already have a product. So one of our our companies was as a company called DrillMap based out of Austin who came to Houston. And while they were very advanced in terms of already having a product and customers, they were software guys at heart. And so they built an amazing product, but had really not a lot of experience in the oil and gas industry and really wanted the mentorship that we provide through our oil and gas mentors.
So what does a day look like for one of these companies?
It depends on the time of the program, if whether we're in the beginning or at the end, but they have a lot on their plates because many of them, like DrillMap, already have a business and ongoing concern. So they have to continue to manage their customers, manage sales, tweak the product, develop the product, et cetera. At the same time, we're running them through sort of a business boot camp. So they're going to sessions on financial modeling, on fundraising, on top 10 legal mistakes for startups to avoid. And they're having to start practicing for their Surge Day pitch, which it takes a lot of time to kind of perfect a TED type like talk about their business.
Tell me about Surge Day.
Surge Day is sort of the culmination of the 12-week program. We have a big event that we put on at House of Blues. All the 10 companies get to pitch their stories in a TED-like format rather than a typical business plan competition format. And we invite investors, energy community members, executives, potential customers. And this past year, we had about 400 people attend for Surge Day, even though it was our first year. So we felt the event was a huge success.
Well, and as a for-profit entity, will you raise another fund?
Yeah, so we are currently raising a fund for our second class, and we're also starting to take applications for companies for our next class.
How many companies will you accept?
The target is 10. If we have a great pool of applicants, we could take up to 12. If we don't get such a great pool of applicants, probably down 7 or 8.
And how much money do you invest?
For each company, we upfront invest $30,000. That's actually less of an investment and more of just here's cash to get you to Houston and make sure that you can survive while you're working on the business. We also have a pool of capital to invest anywhere from $20,000 to $50,000 into a convertible note for each company.
Well, what are some of the trends in energy that came true to you over the last 12 months?
Yeah, there's a lot going on in the energy space right now. A few trends that are very particular to Surge and things that we follow, especially because we're focused on energy software companies, include things like the generational crew change, which I'm sure you've heard of going on in the energy industry.
Explain.
So over the next 10 years, about 50% of the workforce in the oil and gas industry is set to retire because they're a baby boom generation. Not the entire workforce, but the experienced managers, et cetera. I think a similar trend is going on in the utility industry as well. So for Surge, what that means is oil and gas companies are not going to be able to completely replace all the lost workforce. So they're going to need to get more done with less. We think software is going to be a big piece of that. Additionally, the Gen Y generation is going to come up and is going to be the managers, and they're used to their iPads and their iPhones and thinking, why can't I process my seismic data on an iPad in the field? Why can't I use cloud technology and do all this analysis in the field instead of having to go back to the home office? So we think there will be a lot of changes in terms of software played to the new generation in oil and gas as well.
All right, and that wraps up our special abridged version of our interview with Sarah Groen, co-founder of Surge Accelerator. Next up, my interview from episode number 49 with Bill White, the former mayor of the city of Houston and deputy secretary of the Department of Energy. And we enter the interview where I'm asking Bill about these incredible times in exploration and development. It's extraordinary times. I sometimes think that we ought to have a national celebration. I contend that too many of the rank and file citizenry don't even know about it, but give us your perspective of what's happened.
Well, I've been doing stuff in the energy business for over 37 years. Started out as a kid when the Arab oil embargo hit, doing models on world supply and demand for oil and the supply and demand for U.S. natural gas. According to all the models of the geoscientists, and I would say a consensus in the energy business just about 7 or 8 years ago. Drilling productivity was down, reservoirs were depleting, and it looked like, we were what they call in the business a mature province. That is, we had a lot of production, we could do some more, but these reservoirs deplete. What you've seen is extraordinary. Between 2010 and at least 2016 or 17, most of the additional oil produced in the planet Earth will be produced in the United States of America. most of the additional hydrocarbons, when you consider most of the additional gas in the planet Earth, will be produced in the United States of America. Our increase in oil production will be more than the oil production of almost any nation, aside from Saudi Arabia and about 2 others. So it's something extraordinary that's happening, and it's great for America.
I even hear sometimes that in Saudi Arabia, the Matt Simmons book, that even their reserves were decreasing substantially.
Oh, obviously. Well. What was happening, I'll tell you what was happening. And my friend Matt, many years, did catch it. I always used to say that energy and the amount of oil produced is a race between technology and depletion. And to use a fancy term that economists use, the result of that is indeterminate. In other words, somebody can't predict 7 or 8 years from now what the course of technology is. You can, however, predict that the big, giant oil fields where the reservoirs had natural pressure and permeability had been generally almost all found before the early 1970s. Mm-hmm. And we couldn't find new ones, and people drilled a lot to try to find those. And those reservoirs, they can be repressurized, but at some point, it's just a matter of physics, their production is going to decline. So with that in mind, and the amount of oil that we were consuming in the world, over two-thirds of the oil from those giant, massive reservoirs that have been, discovered long in the past, the theory that we're going to have less and less oil-produced peak oil
right,
seemed valid. As a matter of fact, somebody predicted in the late 1950s, a brilliant fellow predicted when it would peak and when it would go down. And when you put out what was actually happening, it was exactly on top of that. And so a logical mind would say that the guy probably knew what he was talking about. But then you line up natural gas and you line up oil, and there's an inflection point that's happened in the last several years. And we're the first major, mature, a place that's been drilled a lot before, province in the world, area in the world, set of basins in the world, where you've seen that dramatic reversal.
Well, it's exhilarating. Specifically, if you get into that category of shale gas, my goodness, it's abundant right now. It's inexpensive, and it's clean compared to alternatives. It's like the trifecta, man. I'm just desirous of the whole country realizing what's going on right now.
And it's happening with something that people didn't talk that much about. It's called gas condensate, which is almost like gasoline. It's a liquid form of natural gas. Mm-hmm. And natural gas liquids, which are feedstocks to petrochemicals. So look around this room, and everything that's not wood or steel is made with these products. And crude oil. The technology is being applied now to, nobody knew this could occur, but basically create what are called reservoirs, secondary reservoirs, where none existed, where there was just tight rock. It's fascinating. And the United States has an unbelievable advantage on this, because every year consistently for, about a century, few exceptions perhaps, but I don't even know there is an exception, there's more wells drilled in the United States than the rest of the planet combined. For a long time, we had more experienced petroleum engineers and geoscientists than the rest of the world combined. It's not true anymore, but we do have that base of experience that is unusual. We have pipeline infrastructure here. We have service companies. We have more rigs, land rigs, than the rest of the world combined. We have more seismic core samples, all the things you need to determine where the underground mapping of the United States is much more complete than anywhere else in the world. And because of that, we're in a fantastic position to take advantage of these new technologies, which can drill precisely not just through some layer of oil and gas, but inside that layer of oil and gas.
Wow, Bill White, how cool would it be if we had more people in government like him? Okay, up next we move to wind energy, but not business as usual wind energy. I'm talking about Paul Dickerson's interview back in June of this year with Adam Rein, co-founder of Altaeros Energy. We enter the interview right after Paul had asked Adam to tell us about Altaeros Energy.
Altaeros Energies is a startup company formed out of MIT out in Boston, just down here in Houston visiting this week. we're developing a breakthrough high-altitude wind turbine technology. Now, out here in Texas, you're familiar with wind turbines.
Sure.
Out in West Texas, for a long time, they've been made the same way. Big steel tower, a big crane to lift that rotor and generator onto the tower. Works real well out here in Texas, but in places that don't have very good winds or places that are hard to access, it's just too expensive.
All right, but give us a visual. What does this look like?
So what our team did is tried to adapt a platform from the aerospace sector into the energy sector. What we did is looked around and said, is there a way we could lift the wind turbine into the air without a giant crane and steel tower? And what we did is found tethered balloons is our solution. So what we've developed is a inflatable helium-filled shell that actually would wrap around a wind turbine and lift it up into the air using a conductive cable to hold it in place and send the power down to a ground.
So how heavy are these things?
Tethered balloons have lifted up about a ton to 2 tons for 30 years. So we're looking at developing a system that's between 1 and 2 tons.
Tell our viewers about what you've been doing, really trying to reverse the flow of power to something that's been already happening.
Yeah, well, as you know, it takes a long time to develop a new energy technology that you're putting out into the field for 10 or 20 years.
Sure.
So what we really wanted to do was integrate components that have already been in the field, conventional wind turbines and conventional tethered aerostats or tethered balloons,
Smart.
into a new design. And that way we could overcome some of the reliability challenges. So for example, tethered balloons often lift surveillance systems, and they've developed cables that actually send power up to power those systems. So we can go to the same vendor and say, with a slight tweak, you can sell us a cable that's already been proven out in the field.
To send the power down instead of
down.
sending the power up.
Yeah.
So when you talk about portability, what is the cost of taking it down, moving to another site? Is it prohibitive such that once they're up, they're pretty much there, or can it always be moved as the winds change?
Well, there's 2 aspects of portability. Our system's designed to be towed on the back of a truck. So, but that's within about a 5-mile radius. So if you want to move it within a site to different locations, that can be done. We did it at our test site in Maine. It took about 15 minutes. If you want to move it 100 miles away or across the world, that requires a more expensive process. And you could see that happening every couple of years. So, for example, we target big construction projects where you may need power for 2, 3, 5 years of the project. Then you want to pack it up and send it to the next project.
All right, so at what stage are you?
We put up a 35-foot prototype in Maine over the winter. It's about half scale, and we use an off-the-shelf small wind turbine in that prototype. And now our team's designing and developing our first product. It'll be about 30 kilowatts.
Do these work offshore?
Yeah, so it's something we've been looking at. You know, to do anything offshore, as the oil and gas sector guys know, it takes more time and more money. So our first product will be designed for remote sites on land, such as oil and gas exploration sites and military bases, or even sites up in Alaska. But long term, we see the challenge of bringing power to offshore sites is a huge problem we can help solve.
Any cause for concern with storms, hurricanes?
Yeah, so they've had tethered aerostats in the Florida Keys for 30 years, so they've gone through the ropes in terms of surviving tough weather. The one big challenge is you don't want to really put this in the path of a Class 5 hurricane. Sure. So the first deployment areas won't be the Caribbean, and in those sites like conventional wind turbines, you oftentimes have to take them down if a storm is coming. Other than that, aerostats are rated to survive small hurricanes. They have lightning resistance systems, and they've been out in all sorts of weather and perform quite well.
All right, and that wraps up this episode of the Energy Makers Show, heard on the radio and seen at TheEnergyMakers.com. See you next week.